Hello students. So today we are going to talk about one of the most important topic, that is endometrial cycle or menstrual cycle. Okay. So endometrial cycle is cyclical changes which is happening in the endometrium. It is as simple as that. Okay. So this endometrial cycle, it takes approximately the average duration. Okay, so it is of approximate normal duration is of 28 days. Okay, but 28 days, but it can be as short as 25 days and it can be as long as 35 days. Okay, now this endometrial cycle is divided into three phases. So so the first phase can, so this 28 days of endometrial cycle can be divided into three phases. So they are menstrual phase, which is from first to fifth day. The next phase is proliferative phase, which is from 6 to 14 days. And the third phase is secretory phase, which is from 15th to 28 days. From 15 to 28 days. So first we'll talk about what is a proliferative phase. So as the name suggests, proliferation. Okay, proliferation. So what proliferation means? What? See, at the end of menstrual bleeding, what happens? So this endometrium has to again, if the endometrium will again start to grow. Okay, so that is known as proliferative phase. Now this proliferative phase is under the influence of hormone. Okay, estrogen. Okay, so what are the phases of endometrial cycle? So menstrual phase, proliferative phase, and secretory phase. Okay, so first we are talking about now proliferative phase. So the extent of proliferative phase is from 6 to 14 days. So from 1 to 5th day, what happens? From 1 to 5th day, there will be bleeding phase or the menstrual phase. After the end of menstrual phase, there will be proliferation of the endometrium. And the hormone responsible for the changes of endometrium during proliferation phase is estrogen. Now, what is the source of estrogen? The source of estrogen is the developing graphene follicle in the ovary. Okay, so what does this estrogen do? So this estrogen will cause the again growth of the endometrium. So what are the changes which is going to happen in the endometrium? So the first thing is, there due to under the influence of estrogen hormone, the thickness of endometrium will increase. So at the end of menstrual phase, so the thickness, as there will be shredding of endometrium, so definitely the thickness of endometrium will decrease, right? So at the end of menstrual phase, the endometrium thickness is approximately 1 mm, less than 1 mm. So what happens under the influence of estrogen? Again, this endometrium will grow, and the thickness will increase from 1 mm to approximately 3 to 4 mm. So at the end of proliferative phase, the thickness of endometrium is going to be 3 to 4 mm. What are the other changes? Angiogenesis. Okay, what does it means? Angiogenesis means proliferation or the growth of blood vessel. Angiogenesis, where it's going to happen? It is going to take place in stratum functional part. Okay, now there will be proliferation of the blood vessel. Okay, next, after proliferation, there will be what are the other changes? Important, one more change. One is the increase in the thickness, growth of the blood vessel, and again there will be endometrial glands are there. Okay, so these endometrial glands are stimulated and they will start to grow. Okay, so there will be growth of the endometrial glands. So at the end of menstrual phase, where there is after fifth day, from sixth day onward, there will be proliferative phase. Now, next phase will be secretory phase. Okay, excuse me, which is also known as post-ovulatory phase. Okay, now this cycle extend from 15th to 28th day. Means at this time ovulation has already taken place, right? So suppose if the ovum which has been released and it get fertilized, so the endometrium has to be ready to receive the developing embryo. So what happens? This endometrium will enter into phase of secretory phase. Means here then the growth will be more growth of the endometrium, and then the this gland will grow the secretion. These glands will start secreting some nutrition substances which will provide nutrition to the developing embryo. So the changes in the endometrium which occurs at the time of secretory phase is due to the hormone progesterone. And now this, and there is a slight role of estrogen, but the most prominent role of progesterone is seen. Okay, so progesterone is secreted by the corpus luteum, which is formed after ovulation. Okay, so what are the changes in the endometrium which is caused by the hormone progesterone or which is seen at the secretory phase? So there is this endometrium. The thickness of endometrium will increase. Okay, so the thickness will be approximately of 5 to 6 mm. Next, there will be elongation as well as coiling of the endometrial arteries. Okay, so next, these glands, they become secretory, and then they will start secreting some thick viscous fluid containing glycogen. So there will be increase in the thickness of the endometrium. Okay, and then this secretory activity is going to increase, and there will be more blood supply. Okay, so this was all about the secretory phase. Now suppose if pregnancy takes place, so this our endometrium, the endometrium is ready to receive and it is ready to supply the nutrition to the developing embryo, and there will be dominance of progesterone which is going to be there, which will be continuously supplied by corpus luteum up to 3 months. After that, placenta will take the role, and then progesterone will be secreted by the progesterone. Okay, now by the placenta. Now suppose there is no fertilization, fertilization did not take place, then what happens? Then menstrual phase will start. So this menstrual phase is actual the bleeding phase, and the average duration is approximately from 3 to 5 days. Okay, so what happens? So this about 24 hours before, approximately, so there will be sharp decline in the plasma level of the hormone which is responsible for the menstrual bleeding. Okay, so what causes menstrual bleeding? So as we have already seen that the arteries, the blood supply, the arteries have developed. So there are these arteries, and what happens? It will intense spasm of spiral arteries will start. So what this intense spasm of spiral arteries do? It will lead to hypoxia and ischemia. So this, due to this hypoxia and ischemia, what will happen? This necrosis of spiral art, the stratum functional, there will be of the endometrium. Means there is no supply of nutrition. Okay, so this lack of supply of nutrition will lead to necrosis. Then what happened? Now due to intense spasm and due to necrosis, these blood vessels will get open up. Then the necrosis, and it will cause for the degeneration of the endometrium. Okay, so this entire process, this phase is completed in 3 to 5 days. Okay, so this endometrial debris, they contains necrose, sloughed tissue, blood, serous, and large amount of prostaglandins and fibrolysins. Now, menstrual blood immediately get clot inside the uterine cavity, but soon it gets liquefied by the fibrolysins present. Okay, now during menstrual phase, now, the thickness, about two-thirds of the superficial endometrium gets sloughed off, and only a thin basal layer is left behind. So this was all about endometrial phases. So first we have talked about proliferative phase, secretory phase, and then we have talked about menstrual phase, which is the bleeding phase. Now we'll see, as we have talked about role of estrogen and progesterone. So there are important other controlling factors for this endometrial cycle. So we'll see the role of hypothalamus. So what does this hypothalamus do? So hypothalamus regulate the secretion of gonadotrophin, especially both follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone, which is responsible for the follicular development as well as for the ovulation. Okay, through, so which hormone is responsible for the secretion of gonadotropins? Through gonadotropin releasing hormone. Okay, now this gonadotropin releasing hormone, it will stimulate anterior pituitary hormone to release gonadotropin. Okay, now, the release of gonadotropin releasing hormone is influenced by, now again there are various factors which will control this gonadotropin releasing hormone, which is finally releasing gonadotropin. Okay, so the factors which is regulating, they are dopamine, endorphins. So these are important factors which is going to affect, influence gonadotropin releasing hormone. So again, so what is the, there is also a role of anterior pituitary for this entire endometrial changes. Now the anterior pituitary releases gonadotropin, as we have seen, follicle stimulating, we have already learned in previous slide, that is follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. Now, gonadotropin, they are going to actually regulate the ovarian cycle. That means here I'm talking about formation of Graafian follicle, ovulation, and formation of corpus luteum. Now, role of ovaries. So, ovaries play an important role in the regulation of ovarian cycle as well as endometrial cycle by releasing a hormone, that is estrogen and progesterone. So, this was all about men's endometrial cycle.